Hey everybody, welcome to AfterBuzz TV's Legends of Tomorrow After Show. Tonight we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 10, Progeny. We'll find out that awkward moment about when you realize you have a younger brother. Sometimes it's the best way to mend a friendship by just beating the snot out of each other. And is it really ghosting if you have a time machine? Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, my dreams came true. As we talked about, chance to see Dave Child do the robot was the whole reason that we decided to do this song. Welcome everybody to AfterBuzz TV's Legends of Tomorrow After Show. I'm one of your hosts, Frank Moran. You can follow me here on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. I'm joined over here by three fantastic people. We're going to break down the latest episode of Legends of Tomorrow. To my immediate left, we have Lex Michael.
I am Lex Michael. All over social media at the Lex Michael with parts made in Japan.
I'm Dave Child. You can find me at Mr. Dave Child. I've got a secret.
Well, and I'm Lacretia Lyon, and if you can spell my name right, it's Lacretialyon. Find me anywhere online since there is only one.
There you go. Now, folks, we love it if you like us on Facebook. Rate us on iTunes. Give us those sweet 5 stars. And follow us on Twitter. We love to get in conversations with you. Now, certainly, folks, I know that the last episode, we were getting some comments about our critical nature about the show, our sort of negativity.
A couple people on Twitter got a little mad at us.
And I will just say, folks, we love the show. We want to love the show just as much as you folks do, too. And we come into every episode wanting it to be the best possible show it can be. And we just get frustrated sometimes when it's not executing the story as well as we would like. And then we get a little critical about it. But even though we can be critical and we may have a little fun with the show, we still really enjoy the show. And so we hope that, folks, that you will take our critical natures, if we have those kind of thoughts, with the good spirit and intentions behind it.
Although not maybe the most promising start when you have to open by going, I promise I don't hate this. I promise I don't hate it. No, but actually it's funny because I forget because I am so used to constantly making fun of stuff that I really, really like because I really like it and it's fun for me to start poking at it. Right. I forget that if you're not somebody who does the same thing and you don't have context for that, it may sound like all I'm doing is crapping all over it, but I'm not. Like, I genuinely, again, we're almost apologizing for some of the things we may possibly say in this episode.
I will be saying all those things.
But, I really enjoy this show because even though occasionally there are things that the show attempts that I maybe don't think they do as well as certain other things, there are always a number of things that I can rely on the show to do really, really well. There are certain relationships that are consistently fun. And then, of course, much like last episode, if all this episode was a few minutes of them flying around fighting robots, I'm in. That's good. I'm so pleased with that aspect of it, that it colors some of what I feel about maybe the things that I'm not quite as jazzed about.
I would agree. The fact that I get to see Firestorm every single week on my TV is phenomenal. And the next week I get to see Jonah Hex, who I never really thought I'd get a chance to see. Maybe, I saw him once with Josh Brolin, but let's see him have done a little bit better than Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin doesn't like that movie.
Yeah,
that's true. There you go.
Even Josh Brolin didn't like the Jonah Hex movie. I mean, and just like last week, Captain Cold and Sarah, great. Why don't we get more of that?
I love their friendship. They have the best friendship. I feel like whenever they have a heart-to-heart, it actually means something. It doesn't actually feel like they're shipping. It just feels like they're best friends. And he's dealing with, if anything, she's trying to help with the Heatwave Captain Cold ship.
Before we get too far into the episode, I just want to bring up one thing with you guys, is because we've talked about certainly the cast, and it is a large cast, and we've always talked about every episode that everybody needs to do something in this episode to kind of want to serve every character. Do you sometimes now, or this far, episode 10, do you feel like, boy, maybe the series has too many characters, and it'd be better served if we had a couple characters less, and that way we could invest in more, we could get more Sarah Snart scenes, things like that?
Yeah, either work like that or say The Walking Dead has a huge cast, so sometimes they tend to separate, you'll have certain characters in one episode and then the other half in the other. So, I mean, if they could do that, they could maybe keep the whole stack, but if they want to use everybody, they kind of need to thin the herd.
And it's very difficult when you do have a big ensemble like this, and I think it's a very strong ensemble as well. I think this is a very talented group of actors, and these are really compelling characters, but it's very difficult to service an ensemble that large when you only have 40 some odd minutes every week to tell your story. And the result is often either certain characters will get a bit of a short shrift, and you won't get to develop them as strongly or with as great care as some others. Or the flip side of that is occasionally the mandate being, apparently, we have to give somebody, what? Nope, taking that again. The mandate being, we have to give everybody something to do in every show. And sometimes it's hard to make that happen organically when you have so many characters. So you occasionally get a sense of a storyline being created just to give somebody something to do. Which
Like Kendra, right?
and that's the thing is and I'm so not a shipper, so I'm not the person that tends to gravitate towards the romantic relationships in shows like this anyway. But I will say that the Ray and Kendra relationship, to me, as much as I like those two actors, it still doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel quite earned. It feels like something they came up with to give these two more to do on the ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, it just seems like filler, and it doesn't serve either character. To me, it really actually hurts their characters more than it helps them. Because, like Kendra, I mean, how bad does she look when, especially as a female? She's not been single except one episode since she's existed in the Berlanti universe. And it's like, really? When Carter died, I was hoping we would explore her character.
Yeah.
And then they threw this in there, and it's just like, okay, why?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's tough to have a rooting interest in the Kendra-Ray relationship because we spent so much time with the introduction of Kendra that her relationship with Carter, they were immortal lovers and that they're always destined to be together. And so it's hard to constantly keep pushing that in the initial setup. And then once you take Carter out of the equation, I feel like you can introduce Ray and it's just going to be fine because, ultimately it seems like Carter's going to be back. Whether in the next lifetime, for sure. And then, so whatever happens with Ray, I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm surprised we haven't seen Carter yet because they're jumping around time. So they're jumping through different lifetimes. So it makes sense that they would meet a past or future Carter somewhere in this time stream, but they haven't yet.
Yeah, especially when they had that 2-year gap and they're supposed to be immortally connected. Yeah,
but we also don't know. So because this Kendra from our present, who's now going on these adventures through time, because she hasn't been killed, neither one of them resurrects yet, right? So they're not going to meet another one in the future, presumably. So, all right, arguably, yes, you could go back and you could meet another one of either of them in the past, but also they're stuck more or less in one spot in the 50s. He could be on the other side of the planet. It's entirely possible they just wouldn't bump into each other.
Right. I guess there is a concept, and we could talk about this more later, but I guess there is a concept in this show that once they were plucked out of the time stream, they're never going to affect the time stream after that point. I think that's something that they're trying to play with in the show. And I think that's some of the Ray stuff we're definitely going to talk about a little later. Oh, yeah. But so I guess in that way, that's why Carter wouldn't appear later is because she never died, so he just never gets reborn. So because she's just plucked out of the way. But I feel that's just odd to me because I feel like she dies eventually, so there would be a future Carter or there would be a past Carter. I don't know. It's just strange.
Well, and that's you're introducing mystical concepts into time travel, which is pseudo science fiction.
Right.
So it's like two totally different schools of fictiony, thoughty, waddy stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't always.
They're both magic, though.
Yeah.
They're both magic, and they have certain rules I think you can play with. So it's just figuring out. When it comes to science fiction or fantasy, it's just figuring out, okay, what are the rules?
The way I explain it for myself in my head is if she hasn't died yet, then new versions of them don't exist yet on the future timeline
that's what I was saying.
at all.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Which would make sense in this episode, but last week's where there was this 2-year time gap. If they're mortally linked like they are, just like with Vandal Savage, it really made zero sense how they didn't meet because they could be on opposite sides of the world anyway, and they always come together. I mean, that was 2 whole years. Duh.
Did you guys think that this episode was leading up to a Carter reveal?
Yeah.
Because she kept getting these flashbacks, and maybe we could talk about the flashbacks first, because they had almost nothing else to do with the episode. Yeah. But
it was the first time we've seen Carter back in any form since he was killed.
Yeah. So I thought she was sensing him because Raven said, "Oh, you're sensing Vandal because he's so close," and then she said, "No, I'm getting these flashes of Carter," which I thought meant Carter was I thought we were going to get that future Carter.
Yeah, I thought that was very odd. And Elmira Bat said the same thing here in the chat about this feels like it's leading up to Carter coming back.
Right, but I thought it's just strange because we know they're about to jump time again. So I thought, why is she getting these flashes if Carter's not just around the corner? I actually like the concept of going into her past lives and seeing a little bit of her past life.
Yeah, but I just feel like this one, it just seemed like manufactured, like just nonsense for this, just to give her something to do this episode. Yeah. It didn't really pay off in any sense.
It had nothing to do, the problem was that it had nothing to do with the story. It didn't have that feeling of, I'm going to figure out my problem now by looking at this other problem. It doesn't have that that sometimes TV does with like Grey's Anatomy, where they're working on, it's weird to bring up Grey's Anatomy, but where they're working on like a medical problem, and the medical problem has something to do with their personal drama. So I thought maybe the flashback had something to do with whatever personal drama she's facing, but
like Arrow, yeah.
I didn't see. Yeah, Arrow does the same thing. Like I just didn't see the connection that much.
Yeah, because I feel like it was weird to establish those now when, as I was talking, my criticism of this is that you're trying to set up Ray and Kendra as this couple, but you're constantly undercutting it with these flashbacks of Carter. Like, if you want to make us invest in them, then let's just drop the Carter stuff for a while, because you can just focus on the two of them. If you start introducing her kind of humming and hawing and having flashbacks, then it's like, well, why am I going to really root for you guys if you feel like you're going to be caught in this immortal loop of love and destiny with Carter?
Right, and you're setting up like the kid, but the kid we've already seen what happens to the kid, so I didn't know, it didn't progress the story any further. Yeah. It just was kind of, hey, remember when this happened back then? Oh, they were cute. Maybe they should be together again. It kind of felt like that. It kind of felt like, oh, don't forget that she has one true love, and it isn't Ray. And we're like, yes, we all know it isn't Ray.
Well, and to me, had they broken them up, that would have made total sense. But the fact that in like the last little bit, they put them back together, I was just like, oh, well, yeah, there's zero payoff to those flashbacks. And then we're all like hoping that it's over.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm worried about this relationship because I feel like it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. You could break them up, and then you think like, well, why do we waste so much time in the season? It's telling stories about them just to break them up. But then if they keep going, you think like, well, they really can't go long term because we know that it's going to be, Carter's going to come back into the fold at some point, I would imagine.
Yeah, this relationship is conceptually maybe the character pairing that is working for me the least.
Right.
And it's introducing Carter as a third point in this love triangle. I understand the impulse to do that because he's the only other competitor for Kendra's affections, really. Right. But you've now got a love triangle where one of the points is literally not present in any physical way, and the other 2 points, the connection between the two is not really working for me, so it's hard for me to invest in this wrinkle.
It's a long dotted line. It's not a triangle. It's just a long dotted line where they're looking at one another and pointing up to the sky every now and then.
Well, so we've talked about Kendra's side, and we're talking about like the Kendra and Ray's relationship here. So just a brief setup for everybody. We're in 2147, and they find out that Per Degaton is going to work with Vandal Savage, and they eventually unleash the Armageddon virus. But they decide to split up. One team's going to be Team Kidnap, one's going to be Team Robot. And so on the Team Robot side, we've got Ray, Stein, and Jax, and they go check out the robotics that are based on the Atom suit. They're all automated. Yeah. And when they go there, they find this bust as they're being led around by this one scientist, Dr. Bryce. They see a big bust of Palmer with Palmer written underneath it. And Ray just assumes it's himself. I mean, because it looks pretty much just like him.
Yeah.
And he makes just dodgy leaps in logic. That when he had a child back in 2016, that he abandoned them, and that because this person was so abandoned, even though you have a time machine, they went on to just eventually build these automated robots.
And again, he's going under the assumption that he'll never go back in time and have a kid. There'll never be, he doesn't have a time machine where he's jumping around and maybe he's creating kids in the future. I feel like I would have seen that, but like, okay, I have a kid. At some point, I have a kid.
Yeah, why would you assume like immediately, the moment I left the time stream, that's when I had the kid?
Right, because I think there's some rule that they're playing with, but it's not very clear, like, that we were talking about with Kendra, and that if he's plucked out of the time stream, he assumes he never can go back and like affect the future. But that just doesn't make sense to me because he can go back.
Well, and even the timeline itself, the girl ghosting him, it's like, okay,
Right.
the timeline for you coming on to Legends of Tomorrow, you had just broken up with Felicity, then you were shrunk down in the
but he
Atom
was
suit,
also
you were
a
trapped in
billionaire.
there.
He's
Yeah,
a smart
exactly.
and good-looking billionaire.
I mean,
so.
I don't get who wouldn't want Ray, but I mean, we obviously...
Who would ghost Ray?
I know. And that's the thing, is that's
Who would do
unbelievable.
it?
And then it's like the timeline, I'm like, that was pretty short.
Right.
Yeah, and he was imagining like, oh, if I hadn't left 2016,
Yeah.
I could be a father to this child. Like, if we remember back when he was leaving Legends of Tomorrow, he felt restless and lost. He felt like he had no sense of direction in his
Yeah.
life when he came back on Arrow.
Well, on top of that, it falls apart for me as a line of logic when you remember that in the first episode, when they all got on the Wave Rider in the first place, they were told that if we succeed and we take care of this, we can bring you back to the minute you left.
Yes.
So I'm going like, I totally get that. I buy that Ray would internalize this, and I buy that Ray would overthink it.
Right.
I have a harder time buying that he wouldn't go, but if I have a kid, I'm not a deadbeat father who abandoned his child, because we can just go back to the moment
Yeah.
we
And
left.
fix it.
I also feel like he could have. I'm surprised he didn't go through the existential drama of being like, I have a dick kid. Like, you know, he's going, I'm not a father because I jumped time. He's going through that problem, but he could be like, I would assume I've raised the kid and I'm not a good dad because he turns into an evil Robotnik. You know, I would just jump to that conclusion, and that would be like my problem that I'm having. Also, if you have a twin brother, I feel like that would maybe work into the logic of it too.
Yeah, even if it's not a twin, if it's just a younger sibling or something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
No.
you would.
Oh, it could be a younger sibling.
Could be young. We don't know exactly,
Yeah.
but they look eerily alike enough that you could mistake a bust of
Right.
that person as you.
This is something that's so out of left field and
Yes.
so strange to me that I cannot be mad at it.
Yeah.
I can't, and I don't even want to criticize it, because I had this moment when Ray reveals to the characters around him and to us, the audience, that he has, and apparently has this entire time had,
Yeah.
an identical twin brother named Sidney
Sidney
Palmer.
Palmer. Yeah.
I was like, great, good, that's awesome.
It was
Cool.
funny. Yeah, the reveal was funny.
But the fact that he all of a sudden comes to Felicity at some point in the future, when after he supposedly died in an explosion, Sydney was never around at all during any of that time when Felicity had taken over
Right.
the company. Where's Sydney? Like, I'm like, hey, this is my brother's company. I should be running this instead of Felicity. We never saw Sydney.
Right.
He's off having his own adventures on a completely another spin-off show that we're gonna get.
He must-
like.
Let's
I would
pretend
watch
he's
the
a
Sidney
younger
Palmer
brother.
show.
Yeah.
It's called the Sidney Palmer Files.
Yeah.
Sidney Palmer
Yeah.
Files.
Yeah.
I feel like it must be a younger brother, because he even says like, Felicity must have hired him on, and that's how he, got in charge of everything. So he must be, maybe he's like a baby, but he's just like,
And he looks exactly like it. Well, I don't know. If you
grows
put
up
a wig
to
on my
I look
younger
a
brother,
lot-
we look alike.
yeah, I look a lot like my older brother, who's like
Yeah.
3 years ahead of me, but still, it's like, I feel like I just like the idea that it's like, well, that's fine then. If it's my brother, I'm just like a terrible uncle. I'm not
Yeah.
a terrible
It's
father.
like, oh, good.
That's fine.
This is not a Maury episode. All right.
But then too, when he finds out that it's actually a bust of his identical twin brother, who he's never mentioned before, Sidney Palmer.
Yeah.
He then makes this huge leap to not, okay, it's not my child that created these robots. It's I'm not a father. I'm never going to be a father.
Yeah.
This was my one shot to have a child, and I lost it.
Yeah.
That just seemed like a leap to me.
I will say, to put a positive spin on this, that the robots looked pretty cool.
Oh no! And again, by the way, most of Ray's stuff tonight really worked for me. I was very
Yeah.
entertained by it. I was actually pretty compelled by most of it.
What?
But actually,
Well, because okay,
What?
this is
And
the
not
thing. This
just
is the
me.
thing.
I just think he's adorable.
I think it is cool to have like, oh, the suit I made turns into evil robots in the future. I think that's a great, compelling, like, I'm affecting the time stream just way differently than I thought I would. And I think that's a good motivation and a good, like, check yourself kind of moment. Did they pay off with that? No, I don't think they did. But they had a good, I think this show is full of, like, great intentions and good, like, ideas that they don't quite connect the dots on all the time.
and some of it for me, where it lost me a little bit, was when they tried to wring extra drama out of it that I just didn't buy. Things like Ray going, I'm not a father. That I was just like, this was you were fine. We didn't actually need that beat. That felt like a little too much to me. Like I was with it before, and then we take that step, and that's just I'm going like, walk it back.
I feel like if he was there, I would just be like, what do you want, dude?
Yeah. Do you want a kid? Do you not want a kid?
See that? I mean, come on. Yeah.
But with Dave, to put a little positive there, the effects work for the flying sequences as Ray is fighting the robots. That is a part of the Ray storyline that I enjoyed. Everything else,
and all the like, whenever there was that great moment, and this is tied into the robots, where they're like, why aren't we shooting back at them? And they go, oh wait, we all have superpowers.
Oh.
Yeah,
and I was like,
that was
yes.
so cheesy.
That the thing is, it was cheesy, but it's also like, yes, you get it, guys. You get that you have superpowers and that you could fight, and it's better to do that than we can't turn into a firestorm on the ship because it'll explode everything.
Yes.
I'd rather have, we forgot we had superpowers, rather than like these weird excuses that was happening before.
The hesitation to always arm up and start fighting back with your natural abilities, or if you have some weapons that are giving you some enhanced abilities. The fact that as soon as you feel like that Savage is attacking the Wave Rider, what your first instinct should be just like, Bond, we're Firestorm, let's just start going. So like, what are we gonna do, guys?
Well, and that's the thing too. And I would not maybe say that I agree wholeheartedly as quickly if that wasn't always ultimately the solution. There has not been an instance yet where the resolution hasn't involved, oh, no, you're right, let's be Firestorm.
Right.
So I don't understand the hemming and hawing about it at this point.
Yeah, because Firestorm is always good.
That's something that I don't quite mind, because that's always been a little bit of a leap in comic books you have to forgive. Because there's always the joke about how like Superman is how he succeeds is he just tries a little harder. I mean, that's sure. He's in chains. These chains are hard. I'm just going to try a little harder. That kind of it kind of felt like that.
That makes sense.
So
and like you were saying about, you called out the effects work for being particularly great, and it is all of that stuff where they're working together, using their powers, bouncing stuff off of each other, fighting robots.
He shrank a couple of times,
which is great. Like all of that stuff is so much fun and is consistently a highlight, and the show does it so incredibly well. And I think part of the reason why it works so incredibly well every time is the simplicity of it. You can show them working with each other in really interesting and complex ways, but the reason that works and the reason it's so fun and exhilarating to watch ultimately is because of the simplicity of it. I think when they try and spin a few too many plates with a few too many moving parts, it starts to get a little...
Yeah, a little heavy.
It I think loses its way a little bit. But then you come back to like, this Firestorm and he's throwing fire at robots. And this is awesome.
Well, we do have our other side of the story. We've talked a little bit about it, and that is we talked about Team Robot, but we haven't talked about Team Kidnap, which is basically like the crux of this whole...
Future Hitler.
And they did draw the direct parallel. Rip Hunter mentions, it's
did.
like, this is I forget what he says. This is Adolf Hitler of the future.
Yeah, he basically, and I think Snart even calls him Future Hitler, which I was actually really happy about.
And of course, that's a reference to, it's a very popular question that's been touched on in pop culture over and over and over again. If you could go back and stop Hitler by killing him as a baby, would you? And on the one hand, it's, well, yeah, I want to stop Hitler. And on the other hand, it's, I don't really want to kill a baby.
I think the solution's always kidnap him and raise him as your own, right?
Well, that was suggested.
Yeah, and I feel, what was really the most confusing, first I wanted to ask you, actually, because when they said his, impossible to pronounce name, Perdegatron?
Perdegaton.
Perdegaton? I instantly said, okay, this must be a comic book character I'm not as familiar with because it's impossible to pronounce, and no one who writes TV would actually write that name down as an idea for a name on TV. So who is the character from the comic books?
He is a villain of the Justice Society of America. Back in the old days, in the 40s, he was part of the Time Trust. So he'd be traveling through time, trying to find ways to take over the present using weapons from the future.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's really cool. One of my favorite stories is there's the JSA and the JLA always did those crisis where they'd cross over. They do their crossovers on the multiple Earths and team up. Doing the Earth 1 and Earth 2 thing. And there was one series where they had both the JSA, the JLA, and the All-Star Squadron So the modern day JSA, the past in the All-Star Squadron, and then the Justice League, all teaming up to fight Progeny, who had gone back to Earth Prime, which is like supposedly our Earth, and he had made sure that a Cuban Missile Crisis had happened. And devastated everybody after that, making sure that all the missiles went off. That was kind of a
jerk.
really cool storyline. Some of the
jerk.
best George Perez covers on those JLA issues. Oh, so good.
He wasn't really a dictator. He was kind of a bad guy who was trying to become a dictator.
Yes. So
Okay,
and cool
interesting.
red hair. He'd always wear like this cool, like spats and all that stuff. It looked really cool.
I
Giant
thought it was-
D on his uniform.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they cast someone who just looks like Joffrey.
Joffrey,
in
yeah.
this one. I feel like they were like, it'll work for this. So with this character, I had a big like brain fart, and I don't know if it's just because I couldn't follow it, but I couldn't understand. They kidnapped him. They checked the time stream, said, "Oh, it didn't do anything. We should kill him then." So I don't understand. If kidnapping him doesn't work, why would killing him work? I really just didn't understand that.
Well, a lot of times Rip's plans just fail miserably, and he doesn't really
Right.
think it through. It's like people say, would you kidnap Hitler and raise him? But, sometimes things are just destiny. And that's how I look at it. It's like, even if you killed this kid, there'd be somebody else to take his place.
He
if
talks
that's
about
what- yeah.
time
Yeah.
wanting to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But still, even not even doing like the option use, like kidnap him and raise him as your own. Like they could kidnap him and take him to someplace else that would kind of help to deprogram him and maybe make him do something else. And who knows what he could do at that point. But that is not an option that really gets addressed or even put on the table.
Yeah, I mean, also that's a lot of effort just to
That's
raise a kid.
It's a long game. It's a
Although
long
apparently
game on that.
Ray
Ray
kind of
wanted
wanted
to
to be
be,
a dad,
yeah.
So Ray and Progeny, they go off.
Yeah, Ray and
But
Kendra raise the child together.
It also seems a little bit like that wrinkle was introduced specifically to introduce the idea of killing him so that there could be this big moral quandary that the characters find themselves in. And I don't know about you guys, but that didn't totally work for me either because, yes, okay, we can mull over the question as far as, what do I
Should
think
you
I
kill
would do
Hitler?
in this situation? But I never bought for a second that any of these characters would actually kill this kid. So there wasn't, when Rip brought him out to look at the body of water there and he pulls his space revolver, there wasn't very much tension in that scene for me because never for a second did I think Rip was actually going to do it.
Because he's a pansy.
And even Progeny says that as well too. It's like Savage taught me what a killer looks like, and you don't have that look. So even he knew in the scene that he wasn't in any jeopardy as well.
I thought he was going to throw him in the lake and go like, "You can't swim, can you?"
Do his
I
little
thought-
Frankenstein's monster
Yeah.
thing. Float. Beautiful. Float too.
I was surprised they didn't do. I was surprised they didn't do stuff with Snart there or Rory because they're the two people that maybe could kill the little kid or Sarah even.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I guess you have to make it more immediate because the immediate ramifications is trying to save Rip's wife and child.
Right.
So I guess
So
that he's the one that is most immediately affected by whether he lives or dies.
True. Yeah. So
because this era that they were in was the last gasp of humanity right before the horrible Vandal Savage run future that led to his wife and child being killed.
there's a
Yes.
virus that wipes off all the people that aren't inside these little perfect bubbles.
Yeah,
Right.
the Casnia conglomerate where corporations run the future and nobody wears collars on their jackets.
Right.
That's how you know you're in the future.
Corporations do not like colors. That's the biggest thing. I also love that there's a Star Labs, the capital city is just like Star Labs city now or something. That seemed pretty cool.
And it seemed weird to me though when Rip decides I'm not going to kill you because that's I have to be better than that. But he also says Savage is going to betray you, and then he just leaves it at that. And at first I thought he left him and he was going to make the kid walk all the way back. But then I feel like if you're going to tell him that, why don't you show him examples of throughout history of everything that Savage has done to betray everybody that he's ever worked with and say hey, this is not a guy you want to have close to you. But this is any that was
in
addressed.
fairness, his name is Vandal Savage, and he's always sneering. I feel like you shouldn't need to be told you don't want to hang around this person.
Yeah, I loved when he and
Seems like such a
Sarah
good guy.
exchanged bitch faces. It was just nothing but that exchange.
It must have been one take where they just kissed a little bit on the lips. mwah, and just walked away.
But it feels like Rip's objective to try to change something with good old young Prodegaton, whether to kill him or to try to at least convince him that Savage is going to betray him, doesn't help at the end because he lets him go back with his father after exchanging him with Sarah.
Yeah.
And then like all that happens is everything ends up accelerating. The timeline accelerates and makes everything a little bit
Major
worse.
And by the way,
Gideon.
so are they suggesting, by the way, because if you look at our possible options, we've established concretely, according to the timeline, that taking him away somewhere, raising him as your own, or whoever it is, does nothing. Okay?
Nature versus nurture.
Letting him live, as it turns out, makes everything way, way, way worse. So is the show telling us that really their best plan was to kill him?
I mean, you would think so. I mean, for some reason, because that Armageddon virus got unleashed 5 years sooner than it was supposed to. So you think that's 5 years of life that everybody around there lost. I've mentioned hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people lost that 5 years of life because the timeline got accelerated.
Because if you think about, I'm trying to, I'm like going over the details again in my head, and you see when Vandal Savage shows up in that boardroom again at the very end when they're talking about how the timeline accelerates, he's saying, well, so Megatron's father died, and so
pre-Megatron.
And so pre-Megatron inherits his position on the board, but because of his very young age, he elected Vandal Savage to essentially be his proxy, and that's how Vandal Savage has the ability to step up the timeline. But if they kill pre-Megatron, then he never kills the father. The father still blocks Vandal Savage's attempt to do what he does ultimately. Yeah. And we're probably better off, no?
Well, I mean, at least the Armageddon virus would be at least delayed to its original point 5 years later, and maybe even longer. Who knows if Prodegaton wasn't in the picture at all? I don't know.
Yeah, also, I'm going to point out the obvious. They didn't try to kill Vandal Savage once.
Right.
They had, he had him in the sights. They had him there at least. They could have at least gone and tried to kill him.
Yeah, because no Kendra and Savage interaction whatsoever, other than her having one little flash of him before he starts attacking the Wave Rider.
Right. And also, to go back to the corporations thing, I felt like that was such a good idea, and something we've seen in future sci-fi, like Rollerball, I think.
Yes.
Roll a nice pull.
Rollerball, but. I mean, that was such a good idea, and then they didn't really do anything with it. They just isn't this a neat future where corporations rule over countries? All right, but the story isn't about that. Let's focus on this, and I was a little disappointed with that.
Yeah, that was because it was supposed to be, as Rip said, 2147 was like the zenith of it was humanity's zenith right there.
Yeah, so they could have had more fun with that, but.
But what was more fun, I guess, we get to see Snart and Mick have a little bit of a conversation right there. Everybody tries to get them in the same room together for most of the episode. Everybody's trying to talk to both of them, get them in the room together.
Heart to hearts with no hearts.
So this is the other element of this show that always, no matter what else is going on, consistently works for me. One of these elements is obviously what I said before, the big superhero battle-y stuff. The other element is Wentworth Miller as Leonard Snart. And just every scene, it doesn't even matter who he's talking to. Every scene with him interacting with any other character I usually enjoy. I really like all of his stuff with Sarah. I think they have a really interesting relationship, and I think we've talked a little bit both on and off the mics about how I appreciate they don't seem to be leaning hard into it as a romantic pairing.
No, I think it's just a friendship thing.
It's a friendship.
I'm cool with that.
It's a camaraderie, and I like it, and it's really, really interesting. And then, of course, his relationship with Mick, which has taken so many different turns over the course of this season so far. And I really like that ultimately, these are two guys that, it's a CW show, so there's always going to be certain exchange of dialogue about feelings. But these are guys that they're not really all about talking it out emotionally, you know what I mean? So their version of that is we're going to try and beat each other to death until one of us is dead or we forgive each other.
Yeah. And what I do love is just the change in Dominic Purcell's portrayal of Mick after being stuck with the Time Masters for that period of time. Yeah. There was a sense of stillness to him, where and he didn't seem like that, just like that big, just like behemoth that was just going to start burning the world and just smacking anything around him. He had more of a stillness to him in those scenes.
Yeah, instead of that meathead he used to play as Heatwave, as Kronos, he is more on Leonard's level. Yeah. They're more equals, and I like that dynamic, how it's changed.
Yeah, I always consider them the growlers, and because I feel like all their conversations, I love their conversations, and I want to say I love that they're the growlers because I always feel like Snart's just like, I'm really
there was tonight did feel like there was a lot more of sounds from
love
start,
it.
like almost like a 1930s gangster inflection.
Well, I think we all agree that one line when they're deciding if they're going to kill Progeny or not, and Snart just says, let's kill him ourselves, and that way that he does, go give it to me, Lex.
What was the line?
Let's kill him ourselves.
Let's kill him ourselves.
It's just the way for that. I was just like, all right, great delivery.
So good. So good. He's just a great Catwoman. I love it. It's like, I think he's just doing Catwoman this entire time. Like, I think I've mentioned this before, but Adam West,
You're thinking, we've talked about it specifically, you're referencing the Eartha Kitt Catwoman.
I think he is specifically referencing Eartha Kitt in his entire performance. That's my theory, and I'd love to ask him at some point if he's actually going for an Eartha Kitt thing. He's great. They're great.
So that is pretty much the end of that episode. But as we've always talked about the series, it's usually kind of like an episode on, episode off in terms of dealing with Savage and stuff. But I feel like we've dealt with Savages, so it's like our 10th episode, so maybe like 5 episodes, say. Like, it's almost about 5 or 6 episodes we've dealt with Savage. And I don't feel like they've done any sense of getting smarter in their dealings with Savage on the way.
They just screw it up worse.
There's no preparation at all. We're going to 2147, and then everything just goes to hell. Or we're going to here, and then everything just goes to hell.
Just keep doing the same time period over and over again. Go a little bit farther back. I don't know why they're not just hopping back
and try
another
a new
10 years.
version of the plan until they get it right.
Or
Gotta
even
make it interesting.
by the way, Gideon was such a dick in this episode.
yeah.
Because at the end, instead of saying, it didn't really work out, Gideon was just like, we made things worse. You cemented things. Things are going to be worse than we left. So let's leave now? I feel like, okay, let's go back and try and do it again. Let's
It's
fight
leaving
on
the
a different
future
front.
a little worse than we left it.
Yeah, let's just jump ahead.
Found it.
Jump ahead like an hour, and then surprise them at where they're going to be. Because they're not ready for that stuff, and I don't know. It just I just don't understand why they aren't just keep going after Savage in a way.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But I did love the Gideon shade, especially when Sarah asked about the dreams. And she's like, yeah, you had a really one with the nurse there. And it's just like,
right.
I'd really like to hear about everybody else's dreams.
Well, I guess it's frustrating because you saw that, Savage, once he saw that, once they're identified on the screen right there as not being unregistered occupants of that time period or location, Savage knows who they are. He knows where the Rave Rider is.
Right.
Why would you continue to keep going forward in time trying to find him? Because he's going to be so aware of you guys. Yeah. I don't know why not keep going back in the past, which we'll have next week when they go back to the Old West.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a chance.
My thought is we keep talking about the structure of the season as one episode on, one episode off, as far as one episode where they're dealing with Vandal Savage and one episode where they're not, but it's feeling a little bit to me like even the episodes where they're ostensibly dealing with Vandal Savage, they're barely dealing with Vandal Savage. And that's fine. You can do a lot of other things within the framework that they've created, but I'm still not totally sold on Vandal Savage as a huge threat. They keep telling us over and over and over and over, and we've seen glimpses of this future where things are blowing up and Vandal Savage is walking around and he's real happy that things are blowing up.
And he's killing people. He's killing babies, but that's about it.
But yeah, no, there have been a couple of instances, earlier in the season, the blood ritual stuff was very, very creepy.
Yeah.
When he kills Carter, that definitely helps solidify him as maybe more of a threatening, imposing presence. But I feel like he's blending into the background of the show a little bit.
Yeah, I think Rip's just a drama queen at this point, because we're like, okay, I get he killed your wife and kid or whatever, but you're just making him way more evil than we're seeing. Because he's evil, but...
Yeah, they also did a pretty good... I think in a previous episode, they were going for his money at some point.
Yeah.
They were going for the little things that would bring him a rise in power, and I think that was a smart way of approaching Vandal Savage. If you have to space it out and you can't go after him head on, just go after the little things that are going to build his empire. That was a smart way of doing it. And this episode, they kind of do that, because this is about how he gets his political stronghold.
True, they do split up into Team Robot as a backup plan, destroy the kind of that automated militia that he's going to have, police force.
Yeah.
And so we find out at the end of the episode, I guess Mick and Snart, they get into their battle. Snart gets his ass handed to him, but Mick doesn't deliver the killing blow. It says all right, since I didn't kill you guys, we're all in trouble, because now the Time Masters know that I didn't get you, so they're going to send the hunters, who are even worse than I am, because they have no humanity at all left in them. But seeing as how much like Kronos has been, he was pretty much a cipher until we found out that he was Rory, and he really wasn't. I mean, he would just come up and be annoying for a couple of moments. How excited are you about the threat of the Hunters?
This is what I'm excited about, is that we're going to see masked like people with guns in the Old West. They're going to be fighting with future guns and future machines around people that have everyone has a gun. I think there can be a lot of fun to be had in like the Old West.
Mechanical spiders, maybe.
But if Kronos had been built up in the beginning of the season, it's like some really ultra competent, really cool, really calculating, bad opponent for them. And then all of a sudden we find somebody that's even more tougher than him going after the team, then I might be more excited. But like this, Kronos didn't get much development, so how?
Yeah, it just seems like they're going to be 3 Kronoses now.
Yeah.
So it's but now I'm just more excited about the Old West, and I do like that little image that we saw of the future episode of just like the firefight that happens, and that's the only reason why I think there are those 3 hunters, is so that they can have that standoff in the middle.
And I'm so okay with that, because that speaks directly to the biggest element of this series that works for me, which is the superhero, let's all use our powers, let's blend some of these elements in really fun ways. Plus, we get Jonah Hex, which I'm happy about as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I also think if hopefully they're going to lead up to this 3 hunters, and there's going to be a standoff in the middle of the street. They're like, wow, 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 looking at each other. And then opposite the 3 hunters, you have Captain Cold and Heatwave with their own guns, and Jonah Hex with his gun.
That's pretty cool.
And so you have this gun off, you have this standoff, and you got to just make an excuse for the real superheroes to be kind of fighting somewhere. Yeah. But that would be a great standoff right then. So I'm excited for the Hunters because of that. So we'll see.
All right. Let's. So that's gonna do it a little bit for talking about this episode. But we're gonna do a quick news and gossip right here. Super fast.
News and gossip.
Super fast.
So one thing is, in just a few weeks, as we talked about last week, Sarah Nicole Jones, one of the writers and producers of Legends of Tomorrow, is going to be right here in studio. We're going to be talking to her about the episode that she has written, breaking it all down with her, getting some more insights about the backstory about the show, asking a lot of questions that we may have about character choices and plot development.
Dave is going to get to ask if Wentworth Miller is doing Eartha Kitt.
Yes.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
That's question number 1 right out of the gate.
Great.
And we also mentioned last week Patrick J. Adams of Suits fame, that he's going to be coming out at the end of the season to be playing a beloved DC character. And the thought was maybe he's the question. There's some speculation going around.
Yes,
but now it
came
seems
out.
like rumor that it's going to be Alan Scott, which ties into a lot of the JSA stuff that we were showing earlier in our AfterBuzz shows. We were showing some of the props that like Dr. Midnight smoke bombs, things like that from the old JSA articles right there. So,
and Alan Scott is the original Green Lantern.
Yes,
and
the best.
He is the one who famously or infamously, Wood is his kryptonite.
That's right, Wood. I love it. And I'm hoping that it's more the original pre-52 Alan Scott as opposed to the Earth 2 new version that we've gotten, the new 52, just because that costume is so awesome in the original Alan Scott.
Sure.
I want to see that on TV.
They love the new 52, though.
Please no. All right, and so with that, I guess Dave did a little bit of predictions, but we'll do a quick little round robin of predictions before we close this out.
AfterBuzz TV predictions.
All right, Lacretia.
Well, I predict that Carter is coming back, or this flashback was literally just nothing except to annoy us this whole episode. Because, plus we've got to end Kendra Ray. And I think, I would prefer to see the hot couple and Vandal Savage thing kind of end this year, and then maybe we get some new heroes to replace them next year. I mean, no offense to the actors or anything, but just the story hasn't worked for me. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure, too. I am reading conflicting accounts, and maybe somebody either on Twitter or maybe somebody who's in the live chat can help catch me up on what the most current bit of news, one way or the other, is. I heard for a while the plan was to do almost like an anthology type of show where season 2 would be a totally new team, totally new story. Then more recently, I thought I read somewhere that no, that's not actually the plan. We're going to retain a lot of our core cast and do somewhat of a continuation. So
on TV Line, I did see that there was an interview, I believe it was with Andrew Kreisberg, and he said that they wanted to keep most everybody. So it did kind of hint that maybe there would be a few changes. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering if they're going to use these new heroes that they put on. They keep, Legion of Superheroes they keep hinting at, and maybe that's more of a Supergirl thing. But it would be nice to have them kind of bring almost more heroes into the mix, and then they have to deal with like too many heroes. Too many heroes.
Yeah.
But Legion of Superheroes might be a good way of doing that and maybe the JSA comes into it, because they said that that character that they're introducing will lead into the plot of the next season. So whatever that means, maybe if it is going to be Alan Scott, then maybe the JSA is going to play a big part of it.
That'd be so cool.
So that would be kind of cool. My prediction is I think Carter's going to come back. I think we're going to get a version of Carter that lives in the Wild West there. And maybe he'll come back in the next episode. If not the next episode, he'll come back at the very end of next episode. That's my guess.
And what I'm curious to see is how they tie back into the other shows in this universe, because we know, because of different comments that have been made in interviews, we are going to see, I believe, a future version of Barry Allen before the end of the season.
Yeah.
I believe, if I'm not completely crazy, when I watched the trailer for the back half of this season, I saw what looked like maybe it's time displaced or different timeline, different points in the timeline version of the Lance family. And two, and I'm not going to spoil anything in case people haven't seen it, but there's some stuff going on Arrow last night that I think Sarah would take a pretty personal interest in.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see if anyone brings that up in any way.
I feel like from what I've been reading between the lines, it feels like Paul Blackthorne will do a little pop-up in this series to kind of address things that have been happening on Arrow.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of address, because ideally these people are all in this timeline, especially like Ray and Sarah, who were a part of that show. So to not mention it, it's kind of a
that's a big
thing.
aspect of I would like to see. And also, Ray might have another chance at Felicity. That might be another actual ship that I would climb aboard.
I have to say I liked them better because, I'm not a big Ollie fan.
Yeah. Well, I like all of
Yeah.
And one last thing, I will go along with Dave saying that I think Carter could make an appearance next episode, which, if he does, would kind of justify the flashbacks that we got this episode, kind of planting some seeds that paid off.
That's why I think they were there.
And because he does play a character back in the Old West, according to the Jeff Johns Hawkman series, I believe Nighthawk and Cinnamon, who was Kendra's character as well. So if they come across with them, that would make sense. That'd be an ideal location to run across the two of them.
Sure.
Yeah. Right. So, and then one last thing, one of my favorite moments of this episode was that as Ray's trying to disguise his identity in the future, he refers to himself as identity as Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal
And
Lecter.
with Jax's expression behind him when he says that, he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, not
Great
Dr.
moment.
House, not
Nope.
anything, that might have
Dr.
made a little more sense.
Lecter.
Also says, but one other thing that we totally failed to mention, Jewel State popping up in a guest appearance.
Yes.
With
I think
nothing
Oh,
to do.
right.
Yeah.
didn't have a lot to
Yeah.
do, but it's always great to see Jewel State, beloved from Firefly, of course.
Yes.
Wish
Yeah.
Brown coat for life.
Kind of frustrating when you get an actor that is so beloved like that to not have them have more to do in an episode.
Right.
But when you've already got so many other characters, it is tough to even serve as a guest star, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But seriously, CW, bring on the Sidney Palmer files.
There you go. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us for this week on Legends of Tomorrow After Show. We will be back next week to break down episode 11. In the meantime, continue the discussion with us on Twitter. Lacretia, where can they find you?
Again, if you can spell my name right, it's LACRETIALYON. Find me anywhere on the internet, since there's only one.
Find me at MrDaveChild on Instagram and the Twitter, too.
And I'm on all the stuff at the Lex Michael.
And you can follow me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. Thanks so much for watching. Like us on Facebook. Give us those sweet 5 stars on iTunes. Dave the Child is going to do the robot as we say goodbye.
I think my favorite part.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.